all the bad stuff, all of our fouls happened while we were actually playing lacrosse, no one has blown a whistle for any reason whatsoever, that will cause us to apply one particular set of rules to adjudicating this foul. If some or all of the bad stuff happened after we have put up that metaphorical wall and we have blown a whistle, then we are going to apply a completely other set of processes in order to figure out who is going to get the ball and where they're going to get it. Okay, so let's actually, here's a visual representation of that, because I know some folks want to just see this rather than just talk about it in vocabulary. And if there was gameplay happening, moving from left to right on your screen, that big red bar in the middle of the screen represents that wall that you have put up. And that wall is when you blow a whistle. It could be for a goal, it could be for out of bounds, it could be because a period ends, it could be anything. If you blow that whistle, you have put up a wall. Does all the bad stuff happen before you put up the wall? Does some of the bad stuff happen before the wall, some after the wall, or does everything happen after the wall? First, seek to answer that question, and then we will go through it. So let's answer some of those questions here as we keep that metaphorical wall up in front of us. If all the bad stuff happened while we are playing lacrosse and we have not yet put up a wall, we do not care about the order in which that stuff happened. All we care about is the length of the penalty time on each team after you stop that play. If you're able to stop the play and no other bad stuff happens, all we care about is the severity, which is translated as the length of the foul times on each team. This is just a logical circumstance that I wanted to call attention to, and that is that the offense is only going to serve a penalty if they have committed a personal foul. So let's put that in real terms. If I am carrying the ball up the field, moving left to right on your screen, and I get slashed, we have a flag down for a 1-minute slash on the defense. And then let's say we play for another 30 seconds, and I still have the ball and I ward off. Now, that's just going to stop the play. I'm not going to serve any penalty time for that. So a technical foul in that situation just stops the play. It's not going to serve time. But if I get slashed as I'm coming up the field, and then maybe 5 or 10 seconds later, one of my teammates thinks it was a dirty play, and then he slashes the player who slashed me, now we have a personal foul on both teams, and the play is going to stop, and we're going to have somebody from each team serving penalty time, and that will make it a simultaneous foul. So now that we've answered the question that all the bad stuff happened during live ball play, if all the foul time is equal, because we know we don't care about sequence, the team that had it was going to keep it. So the offense, in that situation that I described where I got slashed and then my teammate retaliated with a slash, I get to keep it because the foul time is equal, because that's the set of the criteria that we are going to apply to see who gets the ball. If the foul times are not equal, meaning that the retaliation foul is way worse, that means it's going to be worth more penalty time, and that means the defense is going to get it, because my teammate, let's say my teammate's slash was so incredibly severe that the official looks at that and goes, wow, that's a multiple minute slash. The team with less penalty time is going to get the ball. Okay? So now let's flip it over to where we have maybe something happened in the live ball time. Now we have put up a wall, we've blown a whistle. And now some or all of the bad stuff is now going to happen in the dead ball time. Now we are going to apply the second set of criteria, meaning that we do care about sequence. If we can determine the order in which stuff happened, the last foul in the dead ball time, that team is going to play defense. So
now, one thing to clarify in that, just so it makes total sense, right? Remember the wall that he's talking about, that wall being any stoppage of play, right? So what we're concerned with here, when we're talking specifically about the order that the fouls occurred in, is only going to be dead ball situation. Okay? Everything he talked about previously is during that live ball. Sequencing doesn't matter, just penalty time, right? Or severity, as he's calling it.
Whichever team committed the last foul is going to go on defense, as long as there's something that happened in the dead ball time. Keep that in your brain. But obviously, we know that in the dead ball time, you might have a scuffle, you might have guys locked up with each other, and you don't really understand the order of operations in which the bad stuff happened. That happens all the time. So I'm going to invoke my favorite movie of all time, which dubs as a Christmas movie, an action movie, and a love story all at the same time. Die Hard. John McClane says, all things being equal, I'd rather be in Philadelphia. But if in the dead ball time, everything equals out, and you don't know the order of the operations, and the foul time on both teams is the same, whoever was going to get it when you blew the whistle, that's who you're going to give it to. So if everything equals out in foul time and you can't determine the sequence, give it to the team who was going to get it when you blew the whistle. If the times are unequal and you can't determine the sequence, you're going to give it to the team that was less bad. So now here's another just kind of slide on the application of this rule when we have unequal penalty time. So if we have, let's again put this in some real terms. Let's assume that I was coming up the field and I got pushed and I fell over. Now we have a flag down for a push. And then we have my teammate coming back and retaliating with that same slash for a minute. So now we have a 30-second foul on the defense, and we have a 1-minute foul on the offense. All of that stuff is live ball, so we know that it's going to obviously stop the play, and the team with less penalty time is going to get the ball. But we have a non-releasable element to this. When we have unequal penalty time, the lesser of the two penalty times becomes non-releasable for everybody. And there's a caveat in here that I put because it's saying, assuming that the 1-minute foul is not unsportsmanlike. And the reason that I put that is because unsportsmanlike conduct is a non-releasable foul in and of itself. So if there was that push on the defense and I fell over and there was a flag down and then my teammate's foul was for unsportsmanlike conduct, that would mean that the 30-second push is non-releasable because of the simultaneous foul. But the entirety of the 1-minute foul, because it's unsportsmanlike, is also going to be a minute, just because unsportsmanlike conduct is a non-releasable foul. So now that we've sorted out the first most complicated parts of simultaneous fouls, we've calmed everybody down while we're out on the field, and we're trying to kind of now put everything back in play. We've got coaches understanding who of their players is going to sit in the penalty box and for how long. Now you have to tell them, well, here's who's going to get the ball and here's where they're going to get it. There are two jingles that we want you to keep in your mind as you determine where we're going to restart the ball. The first one is you apply this if all of the bad stuff happened before you put up that wall and it all happened during live play. Live ball foul, leave it where it is. So live ball, leave it. You're going to restart the ball right where it was when you killed the play. Whether that's on the defensive side of the field, the offensive side of the field, does not matter. Live ball, leave it. Second scenario, obviously, means that some or all of the fouls happened after you put up that metaphorical wall. And you have live ball, dead ball, or dead ball, dead ball. Live ball, dead center. That means you're going to give a free clear to whichever team is getting the ball. If you have any or all of the bad stuff happening in the dead ball period after you put up that wall. So now we are going to apply what is going to be a fairly complicated case study, but as with the nature of simultaneous fouls, they all tend to be crazy, wild, zany case studies. And when they happen to you, you're not only going to understand that you're going to apply this sense of insanity, you're also going to inject emotion into the game. So,
Al, can you stop it for a second?
Situation in a game.
There you go.
So guys, he's going to come up with a play here that supposedly happened. It's not something that is outrageously uncommon, but it's certainly not seen every day. So let's let him go through. It's not going to show you a play. He's going to walk you through the play. If anybody has any questions about this afterwards, please speak up and we'll talk through it. Okay?
It's really important for you to be able to take a step back and calmly go through the process that we're talking about today and apply all of the procedures to figure this out logically. It's obviously going to take a little bit longer than what we're used to in a normal situation, the crazier that it gets, and that's okay. Take it slow and we'll get through it. So let's talk about this case study. This actually happened in a game. Team is running to the goal, and we'll call that guy Alpha. So he has the ball, he's headed to the goal, and then the defender who's guarding him, we'll call him Bravo, he commits a penalty, and it's going to be a holding penalty. So we have a flag down, and the offense continues to play with it, and the player just goes to the goal and scores.
Simple enough, right? We've also, I mean, this is just a standard hold call. Mark, you got it right. Mark Monson sitting here doing this. Right? Normally, goal scores, flag would be waved because a hold is a technical, right? And then we're done. So nothing confusing about it so far. However,
so obviously we know that we have a good goal and a technical foul, and the technical foul is typically wiped out with the scoring of a goal. So as the trail official, you're going to do your due diligence and you run over to the box and you're going to explain to the table area, we have a good goal, the flag was for a hold, the penalty is wiped out, and we're going to face off, we have a good goal. But as you're doing that, the defense's head coach says, hang on a second, I want a stick check on the goal scorer. So now you're going to say, stop what you're doing, and you are going to turn to the scorer, and you are going to say, do not touch your stick. Okay.
literally happened in a college game yesterday. This scenario exactly this way. So this stuff happens. And remember
You and
this
I are
year
in
with
mind
stick
meld.
checks, right? With stick checks, when a coach requests. So
Now
here we
you've
go.
looked at this player and he's looked at you, and you've made it very clear that you do not want him to do anything to the cross that he has in his hands. So, of course, what does my man Alpha do? While you're looking at him and after you've told him not to touch his stick, he absolutely pulls the strings on that stick in order to tighten his pocket up. And now you have a problem.
So stop it, Kyle.
You're going to have
So for any of the rookies out there that we have, do you know what we're going to do then when that kid pulls the strings after you ask for him not to touch your cross? Anybody?
You guys should be able to unmute yourselves.
Flag them.
Toss the laundry.
And what would your call be then?
No goal, and then unsportsmanlike.
For how much time?
1 minute.
Awesome. All right. Keep going, Kyle. Good job.
Nice job.
have is no goal there, but let's talk about why we are not going to have a goal. And I kind of put this in the form of a multiple choice question here because this doesn't.
So we've talked through it. If we look at it, A, we've got throw a flag, illegal cross, 1 minute non-releasable, no need to check the stick. B, throw a flag, illegal cross, 3 minutes non-releasable, no need to check the stick. C, throw a flag, unsportsmanlike conduct, 1 minute non-releasable, no need to check the stick. And then D, throw a flag, unsportsmanlike conduct, 1 minute non-releasable, and check the stick, and if it's illegal, penalize further. What do we think the correct answer is based on our conversation?
Maybe a guy under 5 years here.
Okay.
Let's go with, I'm gonna make Benji do it because Benji's on my top row. Benji, A, B, C, or D?
It would be D.
You are
Why is-
correct.
And that's because the player gets the unsportsmanlike conduct for touching his stick. It doesn't make the stick automatically illegal. And so if you check the stick and it is illegal, it's then another 2 minute foul.
Right. And that's new to last year, but we didn't get to do it. all our penalties on sticks are 2 minutes. Great job, Benji. And what if the stick is legal and this happened? Benji, what are we going to do with that goal and that 1 minute?
So the goal will be good. The stick is legal. The player still has a 1 minute non-releasable foul, and the offense or the alpha team will start with the ball, correct? Because the dead ball foul.
It is a dead ball foul. So alpha committed a dead ball foul. B's going to get the ball.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So the other team, whatever team was not pulling the strings.
Yeah, the defending team, correct.
I always like to tell people, whoever does the dumb thing last, right? Live ball is totally different. Dead ball, whoever does the stupid thing last, the other team's getting the ball. All right.
Neil, if you got a kid touching the stick, the goal's still good?
Oh, no, it's the goal is no good.
Yeah, goal should be waived either way, right? Even whether the
Yes.
stick's legal or not. Yeah.
Yes, because the punching of the stick makes that illegal.
Yep, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, great clarification.
Not happen very often, as we know. We have a flag for
You
unsportsmanlike
could probably skip a little bit ahead, Kyle.
Yeah.
that we were gonna necessary, and just so you know. So now that we have no goal and we have an unsportsmanlike conduct, now we have to go back because we now have to bring the hold back into play. So now that we understand, we're going back.
Right? Because remember, this whole scenario started with a hold, flag down, then he scored, then we got into the weeds on his stick. So we still have not adjudicated that initial hold foul.
The hold comes back in. We now have a foul on the defense. We now have a foul on the goal scorer. We have simultaneous fouls. That hold that was going to get wiped out by the goal comes back in because of the reinstatement on the unsportsmanlike conduct foul. So now let's get to our process now that we understand we have a simultaneous situation. When did we have bad stuff happen? How bad was the bad stuff? Who's going to serve how much time? And where do we restart it? So let's go through our process together and understand it. When did we have bad stuff? We had bad stuff during live play, which was the hold. We had bad stuff during the dead ball foul during the dead period after we've put up that wall because we have a whistle because a goal was scored. So we have one on each side. That means we care about sequence. So the dead ball foul, that team is going to play defense. Next part of our process. How bad were each of these fouls? We have a technical foul, 30 seconds. We have a personal foul for a minute. So, like we talked about, the lesser of the penalty time is going to be non-releasable. But like we also talked about, because the personal foul is unsportsmanlike conduct, the entirety of everybody's fouls are going to be non-releasable in this particular situation. So everybody is serving full time. As we just talked about, that technical foul becomes non-releasable. Personal is non-releasable. Which team is going to get it, and where do we start it? So as we noted in our first slide, the dead ball foul means that team is going to play defense. Live ball, dead center. So we're going to give it to Bravo's team. This is a great job by the head coach of Bravo's team calling for that stick check. And not only are we going to give it to Bravo's team, but we are going to give them a free clear in the live ball, dead center jingle. So now here's a little bit more game management situation that I want to talk about. This is something that and if you're not talking about this, you need to be talking about this as you are getting together as a group of officials. Let's say we have all of our fouls in this simultaneous situation are in the dead ball period, and you are all three of you looking at this scenario going like, whoa, what White did on that play felt very much worse than what Red did over here. And Red really feels like they're the team that needs to get the ball in this situation, because if they don't get the ball, like, we might have mass anarchy here because just the perception of what's going on. So in that situation, you can dole out penalty time accordingly, because we want to create an uneven situation of penalty time in that case, and you want to assess more penalty time to white than you do to red, so that you can give the ball to the red team, and then you can have a much more settled set of gameplay after that. Constantly be thinking, who should get the ball in a crazy situation here, for the temperature of your game, for what you feel like might happen after you restart play in a lot of these situations. That is where our discretion as officials can come in and really make a difference, and in what we talk about as being a good game management situation or a poor game management situation.
Can you stop that, Kyle?
These last
So it reminds me of what Brian Platts used to say, like on a kid gets it really hit and he's injured. There is no reason for us to go run over, announce to the field what we have. The coaches are coming on the field. Let's make sure the colors are separated, everything's fine. Then at least two officials are probably going to talk about this foul. We got no rush, right? And he used to say, if that kid gets up, pretty much he jumps up, dusts himself off, and runs off the sideline, all right, maybe we can go a minute. But if he is down there or he's being carted off, then maybe a 3-minute is what we should be doing. And I don't think there's any problem with that. If it's not deserved and all the kid did was twist his ankle because of an injury, that's different. But if it's a huge hit that the kid jumps right up, maybe you can get away with a minute. But if it's a huge hit and he's down or maybe out for the game, maybe out for the season, most we can probably do, unless it's an ejectionable foul, is a 3-minute foul. But when you're doing that, be careful. That guy kind of talks about, it seems like he's kind of saying, you can just kind of decide what you want to do. You still have got to be in the parameter of the rule book, right? You can't just make stuff up, which kind of was the way things were a long time ago. Coaches know the rules, parents know the rules, and video is out there. So you won't have, if you just make stuff up, you won't have much to back you up.
I think when you're really looking at this and your ability to influence the penalty time is just like Neil's saying, basing it off what you saw, but you can always downgrade, right? If I know a kid comes from behind, hands are apart, and he cross-checks a kid in the back, if it's really ugly, that can be a cross-check, that can be from behind, that can be an illegal body check. You've got a whole ladder you could run. Or if it's not terribly egregious and they're both going to be locked up and you don't want both of them to be full-time, could be a push. It was from behind. So I'm not making it up, but I'm interpreting, well, is that a push or does that need to be a cross-check? And that's where you have those abilities. But just like Neil's saying, making sure that it is actually legit.
A couple of slides I just wanted to put in here so that when this PowerPoint does get posted, if you don't want to go back and watch through the whole thing, these last two slides are just a little bit more of a synopsis of everything that we've talked about so far.
Go ahead, we can end this, Kyle.
Here's
So it reminds me of a little bit of a story with Brent Suhu at Westland and OES years and years and years ago. And I don't know if Nick, if you're on the call, if you remember this, Nick was trail, I was lead, and Brent was single side. And there was a collision over at the top of the box on single side. And Nick and I had nothing. We couldn't see from there. And Brent was over there. Kid was down for about 45 minutes. And when Brent came over to us, and I was the R for the game, and I was going to go report, the benches were all amped up, especially OES, the player that got hurt. And Brent said, I've just got to push. And I just go, whoa, you're wanting me to sell this call as a push. I'm thinking something should be higher. And he said, no, all it was a push. I went over, reported that as a push. They did not like that at all. And then we came back later. I was hoping for something more to sell a good call, right? Like what Brian had talked about. And a couple of weeks later, I think Nick or myself saw Coach, and he said, actually, it was a push. That was a great call. So kudos to Brent to standing his ground. He called what was there. It could have been very easy for him to say, yeah, it was an illegal body check for 2 minutes, because the kid was carted off in an ambulance, but it was the right call. So you can't always just make stuff up like that, or, massage it. If that's what you have, just make that call.
Yeah, I spent about 15 minutes on that call thinking, what are we gonna call? What did we see? We saw a push. Can we make a different call? We can't make a different call because that's all there was.
So you remember that, Nick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think-
How long ago was
although
that?
I think it was Putnam though. Putnam
I
at
thought it was
West Lynn.
OES at West Lynn.
It was definitely at West Lynn, but yeah,
It was a big
But-
game. I remember that.
it was a big game and it was a big. The kid definitely went down and he definitely needed lots of help, but that's all. He landed badly, and that's all we can call. I felt terrible about it, but that's what we did.
So I like the time that like he was saying that remember the live ball, the important thing about simultaneous is live ball, all you're worrying about is length of time, because simultaneous is all about who gets the ball. That's all simultaneous is about, who gets the ball. And in live ball, all you're thinking about is total team time. Okay, so you can have a slash for 1 minute on B, and you can have maybe a minute or 2 minute slash on A. B's getting the ball because of less time. Then you go to dead ball, and that length of time is important on the live ball. That's what you're thinking about. In dead ball, it's completely different. It's just order of occurrence. You can have the worst fight by one party, hit a kid in the head, knock him clean out, you've ejected him, and then a kid from the other team can just do something silly like, ha to him, taunt him. Guess what? That team that slugged that guy, he's going to get the ball back. Okay. He did say that the fouls, which is incorrect, the fouls in this situation are simultaneous. They're not. The one hold was a live ball foul, and the stick penalty is a dead ball foul. So by rule, that's not simultaneous. They're different. But the problem is he was mixing up releasability a little bit in there. And if you look under the rule 7.6 for simultaneous, there's not this word releasable or releasability in the whole rule. If you look at 7.2D, that's where it tells you about releasability. Okay, so don't get that mixed up. Yes, simultaneous fouls will be non-releasable because you have opposing players going in, but it doesn't include the whole thing. Okay. And just a reminder for the rookies, just because rookies and the third year guys, you're most likely not going to be an R on a game, but learning penalty enforcement and learning simultaneous fouls, if you can talk in the language that gentleman was talking about, that will help you amazing amount. So work on your simultaneous reading up on that and try to talk through those fouls at the table like he was doing there. Okay. All right, that's
Jared, I
it
saw
for
you.
simultaneous.
Jared was digging through his rule book. What page was it on? 7.6? Page.
I have 81.
726 is on page 79.
Got so 79 to 81, 82.
Yep.
That's the chunk of the rule book we're looking at. I will tell you guys right now, like I've been doing this a while. I look at that every year because simultaneous foul always screws me up. And it's just one of those things. So it's a great one to spend some time looking over.
Just
especially
remember,
before we get into games this week.
just remember, if you're calling non-releasable and it's not an unsportsmanlike or a targeting non-releasable foul or something to the head and neck, if it's just regular personal foul and technical foul stuff, the only reason you're going to be saying it's non-releasable is because they're sharing their first second of penalty time together. Okay, that's the key to being releasable, non-releasable, unless it's like a non-releasable call, like he talked about, an unsportsmanlike conduct foul that is non-releasable. Okay, any questions about that? Did that play seem reasonable to everybody, how he went through it and what happened?
Yeah.
Got some yeses maybe?
Cool.
Okay,
All right.
all right, next, I thought maybe Kyle could talk about offside recognition.
Yeah. So offsides, one of those areas that you will get trapped in. Either you will get trapped or the coaches will get trapped. And either way, everybody's going to be frustrated and everybody's going to get confused. So it's really good when we know what we're doing because it eliminates any of that confusion. One of the mechanics, this changed a couple of years ago. There are still coaches that haven't figured this out yet. When we are looking for offsides, there's probably going to be two different people that call it. Chances are in a 3-man game, it's going to be your single side because he has that midfield responsibility as the ball's coming up. Once it goes in front, right, and it crosses into that offensive half, he's now running down with the play. Trail is likely looking at offsides. So trail and single side are probably the guys that are going to catch this. You may catch it if you're transitioning as lead. But it's going to be less likely, right? So when you are counting that stuff, the change that happened a couple of years ago is that now, instead of caring how many guys are back in the defensive half, we are only concerned with what's in front of us, right? You can have just your goalie hanging back here. And as long as you've only got 6 on the offensive half, you're good. There will be coaches that will scream at you and yell at you about how they're offsides because they don't have 3 back. Does not matter for a second, right? Because think about it this way. If a team decides to sub their entire defense and they do it all wholesale and they just leave 3 attackmen down there, have they given themselves any sort of advantage on defense? No. In fact, they've disadvantaged themselves severely. I only care about calling penalties that are going to award advantage to somebody else. Right? So that's one of those situations where I'm not even caring what's happening behind me. I'm only looking forward. And the easiest way, I mean, you will find your own system. For me, rather than counting, they're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, bad. I just do it in pairs. 2, 2, 2, done. And if I have to sit there and go, there's 2, there's 2, there's 2, but do it again, 2, 2, 2. I know there's probably something happening if I'm having to count and recount. And that's the simplest way. I'm going to turn it over to one of our incredible veterans here for a second. Mr. Poole, would you be willing to share your thoughts on counting? Because everything I have learned about counting forward and offsides, I have learned from Mr. Craig Poole.
Yeah, can you hear me, Kyle?
Yep, we got you.
I think offsides is still, after all the years that we've done lacrosse, is still one of the hardest things to do, and you've got to pay a lot of attention to it. If I'm trail, I'm starting to count as I'm moving forward. I'm starting to look, okay, we still got 2 go over, we can have 3 go over. And I agree with you. I'm always counting in pairs of 2. Sometimes I'll go 3, 3. But it is one of the hardest things to do. And it's another thing, kind of like Neil said earlier, you don't have to be on fire to call offsides, because there's nothing worse than blowing your whistle and throwing a flag and then realizing, oh, shoot, I got somebody behind me. They're not offsides, or, oh, they're coming in and out of the box. So take your time when you do offsides, double count. When I've got an offsides, I don't immediately throw my whistle, throw a flag or blow my whistle. I count again, and usually again. And then the other thing I do too, we talk about ABC, always be counting. It doesn't matter whether you're lead, whether you're single side, or whether you're trail, you're always counting because you're working as a team. I love getting some senior officials on the field, like Neil's on the field and I'm single side. He's supposed to have the last offside and he does it and I catch it. There's nothing more fun than catching somebody else who doesn't get an offsides. Just for fun to talk about after the game, but take your time on offsides, start counting as you move up. The only other thing that I would say, Kyle, is I don't worry about what's behind me. Once I know I've got 6 and 6 in front and I'm trail, I might take a look behind me because now they've got too many men in the back and somebody didn't come off. The other thing I do too is trail you guys is when somebody runs off the field and nobody runs on the field, they probably had too many men on the field to begin with. So you're always exchanging on the sidelines. And what I'll do in that situation, if somebody runs off the field and I've got 6 in front, I get that number, I make sure, and then I go offsides and the coach. And this is true about half the time, you guys, when coaches yell offsides, they're wrong. So don't listen to them yelling offside. Just make sure you do your count. Take your time. It doesn't have to be on fire. And then you've got to decide, oh, shoot, is it offsides on the offense or the defense? Is it a flag or is it a turnover? You're going to make that mistake for sure. Same thing when you're coming up and somebody's on the midline and they run over, they step over and step back because they think they're offsides and you blow your whistle. Well, they weren't offsides. So take your time, do your count, don't be in a hurry. It's a hard call to learn and continually do right.
Thanks, Craig.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I will say for sure, like one of those things to echo Craig's point, offsides should be, in my opinion, should be a slower and later call. Because I am always, just like Craig's saying, I'm sitting there counting, I go 2, 2, 2, ooh, wait, 2, 2, 2, there's an issue. Now I'm doing a bunch of different things, right? I'm counting, I always start at the midline then, because that way if I see a kid sub back, I'm not looking around trying to catch it, but I look straight to that midline and then I start counting up one more time and do it really slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Now I know we've got too many. And if by starting at the midline, somebody decides to run over and sub back, I can check it and go, oh, 15 just crossed. Now I'm counting, oh, 15 was offsides. Now I've got my penalty and I have a number to throw it on because there is nothing worse than when you flag it and you're like, I don't know who it was. Or you get that coach that's like, no, we only have 6. Coach, number 15 crossed late. You got 7 forward. 15 will 9 times out of 10 look at his coach and go, yeah, I did. And that everybody is happy then, right? Because you can't mess it up when you've got that number, right? You can't, Brandon just put it perfectly in the chat, right? You cannot take back a whistle. So
Hey, Kyle.
Right? Yeah.
This is Todd. Can I ask a quick question on how strict are we on that attackman who's chasing the ball and, he tries to stop his momentum from crossing the half line? I mean, when do we flag, when do we not on that chasing attackman coming back trying to play defense?
It's a great question. My line on it is just about any other penalty. It's going to be dependent upon the situation, the game, the score, the level. There's a lot of different things I'm going to consider. If it's a state championship game, you put your toe on that line, I'm flagging it. Right? If it's a JV game with a kid who's never played before, he takes 2 steps and his coach goes, no, stay back, and he didn't impact the play at all, and he jumps back over, he learned, he knew there's no point. So I look at it as advantage gained in those situations. If he does something and realizes his mistake and it was 2 steps and he jumps back, I saw it and I acknowledge it, but it didn't impact the play. It doesn't affect anything. And he learned something from it. If it's a varsity game, I'm probably going to be pretty tight on that. But a lot of that is going to be dependent upon the game time. Yeah, Neil, go ahead.
Just remember though, guess where we are on the field right there? We are dead center,
Yes.
right? The coaches are probably in the corners of their boxes. They can see that. So if you do pass on that, be ready for some heat and be ready for an answer why you passed on it. All right. It's not like down in the goal, because let's be honest, none of those coaches really can see what happens in the goal area. On the 50-yard line, they will have a pretty darn good look at that. So don't be surprised if a coach questions you on that non-call you have.
Yep. Dave, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I've worked with Craig in some games and actually coached where Craig has worked some of our games, and his offsides approach is spot on. And to reiterate, somebody else, I think Todd, maybe you spoke up, that you see that kid cross the midfield and then step back, and immediately everybody starts screaming offsides, right? But one of the middies might be lagging 10 yards behind. And that's a very, very easy trap to get caught in, right? Is to, well, that attackman just stepped over the line. Obviously they're offsides, but they're transitioning and somebody's late. He was only the sixth kid across and he came back, or even the fifth kid, whatever. So I'd like Craig's approach to that is a patient flag or a patient whistle on the offsides, because he's right. Everybody in the stadium is screaming offsides, right? And Craig, may or may not have ever heard me as a coach screaming that, whatever. But his approach to it is spot on. So Craig, Kyle, and to learn from that is that's the one call. Take your time, right? Because nobody's getting hurt. There's not an injury potential. There's none of that. Just make sure you're right. And because if you stop play and I've got a fast break going, we're not going to be happy about it, right? So that's my 2 cents anyway. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. No, I mean, like I said, everything I learned about this, I learned from Craig. So we just turned to the boss. Neil, anything else you want to add, or any other questions out of the group?
You can go ahead and get that high hit video going about 7:35. So
it is dialed up already.
That comment Craig had about the player going off the field like that, and then you think to yourself, wait a minute, I used to go count the players, first, but Craig telling me that made a big difference. And no, that's number one. That guy, number 6, he's number 1. Then I start with number 2. If you guys take anything away for offsides, is that Craig's technique on that? It'll help you a lot, because once you've counted your players, you have coaches screaming at you and you tend to forget about the guy going off, right? You've got coaches yelling at you. If you start with number 6 there as number 1, all right, now number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, you're offsides. Boom. So that'll help you a lot.
And I will say in the chat here, Chris B just put a really, really helpful comment that we hadn't addressed with yet, which is when you're counting that offsides, starting opposite the box, because if you've got guys still subbing, you're going to be sitting there going, hit, So count opposite, then go over, then check the box. And those can all be really, really helpful. Okay. So Neil, you want to move on to high hits? Yes.
Yeah. So this is another Nyloa video on high hits. This one may have some talk about the goal mouth, like Kyle talked about. Ignore goal mouth, right? That's something that we don't have any part of. And we'll have to skip around a little bit in this one, so bear with us, but there's some pretty good video. And I think they've got like a you make the call type of thing where they give examples. This is where some of the sensibilities of college in the D1 game is different than our game, which is all about safety of the players. So when you see the videos, think to yourself, and we're going to call on some of you guys, think to yourself what you may have in this video, in this play. And please speak up, tell us what you got, and then we'll talk through it.
Loyola, Virginia. In this play, Loyola's working the ball around. They take a shot, it gets knocked down. Player makes a great feed behind his back to a guy who's pretty open in front.
So you see that guy in front of the crease get blown up from behind. They should show it again. There, yeah.
Behind his back to a guy who's pretty open in front. And he gets crushed from behind. What we're talking about here is we have to make a decision as a referee on this play, whether or not.
So we're looking right here is where the foul is going to happen. Not necessarily this player, but that zone right there.
This play is momentum that takes us into the crease because.
Right here, this guy's about to shoot and score. It comes from here.
This play is momentum that takes us into the crease because that's the way the rule reads, or whether it's a late hit. If the offense.
All right, so we can stop and find somebody and see what they think. Kyle, why don't you pick Todd? What do you think about that? I see you at the bottom there.
To me, it looks like a push from behind with possession. I don't think it's a high hit. I
Okay.
think I think they scored, so I don't think there would have been I mean, throw the flag, but I think we wave it off with the goal.
Anybody have anything else on that?
I got it a little different.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it late. I got an illegal body check late after the ball's released, but before it goes in the goal. So I'd have goal good and flag down 1 minute for body check.
Yep, I would concur. I also saw kind of a cross check on a defenseless player. So you could talk about severity of the cross check also. It was definitely in the back, but it wouldn't necessarily, to me, look like an illegal body check or anything near the head. But it definitely was that defenseless shooter right on the crease. So definitely looking at a cross check would give it more of a severity for that personal 1 minute. Just my thought.
So you notice in this case, lead is down there and singles back there. So we always talk about responsibility, right? Who has that shooter? Single, right? He's kind of a long ways away, isn't he? But that's what he's going to focus on right there. He's not looking at the goal. Pretty big hit, right? And I would say, Todd, that is more than a push. That's a pretty big hit. Whether his hands were together, I don't know.
Yeah, on replay, hands were definitely not together. That would be an illegal.
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
it's a
you can
cross-check.
argue whether the hands were together or not, but just the force of his play definitely was more than a push. And what are we looking at here? So what happens in this case, too, guys, is he pushes in. He could be injuring his own goalie, couldn't he? By locking this guy into the goalie's knees. So this kind of play is something we definitely don't want. Those hands look like they're apart. So could we have a multiple minute penalty on that?
Probably not. You're not taught to play with your hands exactly together. That's just silly.
You have a defenseless player call, though. That's the issue I see here. This guy doesn't see him coming. He's getting hit from behind. That would be multiple minute.
Because you can increase the severity of any personal check, correct?
Even if you go beyond a push, I just think it's the most of 1 minute. I mean, so, he didn't overextend. That's just my opinion.
A defender, he's trying to save a goal being scored, right?
Yeah, wouldn't you say it establishes a norm of a higher level of contact for the rest of the game if you don't adjudicate on the seriousness of the hit? That's how I feel just personally.
I agree with that 100%. Because
to me, it's all about what level. Sorry, Chris.
Oh, no, I was agreeing with Bosworth because, like, if you don't address the severity right out of the gates on what that is, or even come together as an official crew, you do set the tone for what these players can and cannot get away with right out of the gates. So
whoever said level of play, I agree with as well.
That's more my question is, like, at what level is this game being played? Obviously, what we're seeing here is a college game, so the expectation of the level of contact would be higher. Now, in a JV game, I'm all with you guys on a 2 minute, but to me, depending on the level of game, that might be the appropriate. It might be just a push, or at high school level, I'd probably start at a 1 minute. But if it's varsity playoffs and you're allowing the guys to go, that might be as far as I'm willing to go.
Exactly. That's a 30-second push, and we wave it off with the goal, especially in a playoff situation. I agree with Brandon on that one.
Okay.
If you are going to throw a minute on that, is that live or dead ball?
Well, who's gonna have that knowledge?
That's live.
Line.
Probably lead, right? You're gonna have to confer, right? That's when we're gonna stop play, know what you have in your mind, and single is probably going to be looking, and lead is going to be looking at single. You're going to come together in that crease, right? Above the crease, get the players away from you and talk through this. Tell players to get away. And again, trail has what responsibility then?
Watching the entire field at that point.
Oh,
watching watching everybody. Right.
Shooter, yeah.
Well, I mean, no, once the play's over, Trail is watching 20 players
Watching
and
the
listening to
inmates.
coaches yell at him. But this is where single and lead are going to get through this and talk about the severity, whether the goal was scored immediately. You know, lots of times you can't tell for sure. You may just say, yeah, let's make it a dead ball foul. The severity of that, we may go 1 minute, but let's go dead ball, giving that team the ball back. Or no, let's just go 1 minute and we'll have a face off, make it a live ball foul. It's a matter of microseconds, you know, that these things sometimes happen. So you're going to have to make your best guess.
I will say too that on these situations, very similar to offsides, the play has stopped, right? We've got a ball in the goal. Players are going to stop. So now you've got that time to talk. Did you see a push? What did you see? We've got a goal. How are we doing this? This is another one of those opportunities where you can take a breather and get it right. Right? We'd rather take 20 seconds to adjudicate it properly than to get real flag happy with something, throw it, and communicate before we've gotten together as a crew. So
And
this
if
is
you
one of those
are-
situations where we can slow it down.
So,
If you're-
so my question for you guys, like Craig and Kyle and Neil, you guys have done so many games. If you see this in live action and it's a goal scored, I mean, in my experience anyway, it's kind of like, yeah, it was a little late, but it wasn't egregious. And so, you know, we're just going to move on and, you know, pick up the flag. It was a push. And I think as officials, sometimes that can be the most difficult situation, is because we're looking at a replay here 3 or 4 times over and we can go, holy crap, that was late. But in the, you know, instant of that game, it just looked like, you know, a whole sequence of events. And so, you know, as you were saying, Kyle, it's one of those things where you have to use your best judgment. But in my experience anyway, most of these calls will just be, it's goal scored, you know, it was a little late, but we're going to move on. Am I wrong on that? Or
No, I think you're totally within reason on that. Again, you know, we've said it's going to depend on game situation, score, playoff contention.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of different things that go in, but you hit on the most important piece, and I don't even think you realized it, Scott. You said, yeah, sure, we're going to go, and then we're going to pick up the flag, and we're going to keep going. We're going to pick up the flag because the flag got thrown, right? It looks optically, in a situation like this, throw the flag, because we can always pick it up and wave it and say, no, it was a push, goal's good, flag is waved. But it looks so much worse if after a minute we come together and then go, oh, somebody's got to throw it.
Okay.
So
Right.
the most
Again-
important piece on that is that the turf is littered with a flag, right? We've got a flag down. We
Sure.
can always pick it back up.
And again,
Exactly.
you know that when you are making your call or no call here, this is a big play, right? The
Right.
goal is scored, and either the team could be getting the ball back with the guy in the box, or maybe we're just facing off. So that decision, the call you're making, no call or call, that's now a bar that is in that game. Now, if you
Right.
decide later on to do something different, that's when your credibility is going to be really compromised with the coaches.
Exactly.
They may not like the call, but at least if you're consistent with that, they can live with it. Be ready for a retaliation possibly in this, in my opinion. It's a big
Okay.
hit. I think actually they talked about this being like a 2-minute releasable foul.
Okay.
Partly because of the goalie being contacted.
Oh, fair enough.
That's
That would be part of the college stuff though, right?
Yeah, the goal mouth and all that, but they're also talking about goalies, and not many goalies being around, ready to be going on the field and everything. But I would certainly say that this probably is a 1-minute foul for us. And some of our less skilled games that us south of Portland see quite a lot, that's definitely a 1-minute call, and it could be a 2-minute, depending on the game situation. If otherwise, you're just going to have it just.
So what's your best advice if you're let's say this is a JV game? What's your best advice to sell this to the coach? Because in my opinion, it would totally be on safety. I mean, we have to protect these players, and so this was a complete total, safety issue. That would be my selling point on this if I was going to throw a flag.
Go blindside hit right
And
away.
using the words "in my judgment."
Okay.
Remember, coaches can't question your judgment, even though they try.
Right.
But in my judgment, coach, he was being unsafe, and he put your goalie at risk also. So I'm going with a 2 minute releasable. There's nothing non-releasable about this. It's just in the back. And unless you're saying it's a cross check, that rides up into the head and neck area, it's totally releasable. But you could definitely go 2 minutes if you wanted to in a game situation using safety.
Okay.
Yeah, Neil, if I can add something too, and I think it also is the temperature of the game. What's happened before? Where are we trending? What does the atmosphere feel like? If this has been pretty clean and this is just a quick hitter, okay, maybe wave it and we go on. If it's been chippy or we feel like the energy's rising a little bit, maybe this is a good time to take the air out of this thing. So there are a lot of factors that factor into what this call could be too.
That's spot on. Absolutely.
True.
And one thing I learned from Tim Rossi years ago, and I've never heard it by anybody else, and he's been gone a few years for some guys that don't know him. In a situation like this, more and more of a bigger hit you're going to see later, he would take a break for a second. He would talk the foul through, even if we knew what we were going to do. He just wanted people to calm down. He didn't want us to restart this thing immediately and have the tempers so high. He would take the air out a little bit and discuss it with ourselves, and maybe just say, we know what we're doing, but let's just sit here 10 or 15 seconds, talk about it, make a nice calm call to the bench, and then start up a little bit later, and not just hands on fire. Let's go. The team wants to go. Okay. So you need to go to 12 minutes approximately, Kyle, if you can. So now he's going to talk a bit about what you should be talking about for high hits. Okay.
The first thing is that, for contact that could be considered non-releasable foul, talk to the nearest official before you relay the foul. We know that this is also true when there's only one flag. There are a couple of reasons for this. Your partner obviously has a different angle and a different perspective, and between the two of you, you can help put the picture together, and you can confirm through the discussion. There are situations where we know the partner may not be able to help at all, and we know that body language is important in these situations. If I'm on the game with you and I didn't get a good look at it, and you came up to me and said, "Rob, I think I've got to go with a 1 minute non-releasable," and I didn't see it, or I didn't get a great look at it, I'm just going to nod my head and say, "I'm going with you." And what this does is we know that in these situations, there's always one unhappy coach. One coach thinks he should be locked in, or one coach thinks that he shouldn't be locked in. Well, we now have our answer. Coach, we talked about it. We have the same thing. So that's a way to manage these situations.
Well, I muted myself. One thing that I want to add that also really helps, and was something that, I don't know, let's make lemonade out of lemons, but we have these lovely masks on now during games. So you can sit like this and have a conversation with everybody and nobody knows what you're saying. And it's really nice and it's very convenient. So use it to your advantage this year.
Some things to consider when you're discussing a potential non-releasable foul: that start low and then finish high. That's one kind of foul where I think the discussion comes in, where